The year was 1951. A group of Tibetan nationals was sitting beside the Chinese top officials and signed a peaceful treaty of agreement in the hope that the Chinese would now adhere to peaceful means in keeping Tibet's traditional government and religion in place. But who knew that the Chinese would violate the treaty and slaughter almost more than half of the Tibetans in the brutal attack of 1959? Well, there was one Indian diplomat, Sumul Sinha, who had warned the then Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru of the cruel intentions of the communist China. But the sheer indifferent attitude of Nehru changed the destiny of India forever. Hello and welcome, I am Shreya and you're watching the Pamphlet. The expansionist policy of China is the same today as it was back in the 1950s. A few days back, the Chinese government released a map claiming some parts of Arunachal Pradesh and Aksai Chin as their own. This came at a time when some satellite images from Aksai Chin showed the Chinese side ramping up the construction of reinforced bunkers and underground facilities to protect their military assets from aerial and missile strikes. Some reports suggest intrusion by the Chinese army in the Indian territories and further claiming it to be their own, refuted time and again by the Indian government, is an age-old strategy of the communist China. But this could have been averted if only Nehru had listened to the warnings by the young Mandarin-speaking Indian diplomat Sumul Sinha, who had been the official in charge of the Indian mission in Lhasa between 1950 and 1952. In 1950, the 17-point agreement was already signed between China and Tibet. Few months had passed, and it was now September 1951 when the Chinese army entered the Tibetan capital. Something looks fishy to Sumul Sinha, and he immediately informs New Delhi about it. He explained how terror had struck into the hearts of Tibetans, and a struggle has begun for the mind and soul of Tibet in ways that are subtle and hardly perceptible. Although the then Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru was irritated by such warnings and believed in the sweet promises made to him by Chinese Premier Mao Zedong, he believed that the conflict with China should be avoided at any cost, even if it meant the sacrifice of Tibet. In the summer of 1952, when Sumul Sinha asked the Indian government for a loan of rupees 2 lakh to help the forces fighting for the independence of Tibet, he was again blasted by PM Nehru for not getting involved in the domestic affairs of Tibet. Again in 1953, Sumul Sinha prepared a memo titled Chinese Designs on the Northeast Frontier of India. But just like the past old times, Jawaharlal Nehru ignored the pre-warnings, stating that Mr. Sinha looks back with a certain nostalgia to the past when the British exercised a good deal of control over Tibet, and he would have liked very much for India to take the place of the British of those days. Well, the warnings became reality when China invaded the Indian territory with the capture of Khurnak fort inside Ladakh in June 1958. The following month, a Chinese map claimed large areas of NEFA and Ladakh. Chinese troops penetrated almost 80 kilometers inside the Indian territory by 1959. Then the 1962 attack by China drastically changed the diplomatic and friendly relations of both the neighboring countries. And as of now, the mistake and indifferent attitude of the past Indian leaders made Indian borders prone to the intrusion of Chinese troops. The only time India lost territory to China was under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru, who wasn't too perturbed by it either, as he said, not a blade of grass grows there. Today, when his great-grandson Rahul Gandhi pontificates and indulges in propaganda, one could safely say that the senior Congress leader needs to know his legacy first. Thank you for watching. If you like the content, do like, share and subscribe to our channel, The Pamphlet.